Meditation is the development, practice, and improvement of skillful mental states. What is your state of mind when your boss finds fault with you? What do you think about when your parents or partner say you spend too much time online? How do you accept the circumstances which have put your relationship at stake, or when you miss an airplane or bus? If you don't always feel comfortable, peaceful, and loving, then this course is for you. In the 25 lectures of this course, we will examine the key elements of the statement, meditation is the development, practice, and improvement of skillful mental states. In this lecture, I would like to introduce you briefly to the history and true purpose of meditation. My name is Mangsarana, and I will guide you through this meditation course. I have been studying, practicing, and teaching meditation in Sri Lanka and Myanmar for over a decade. I have been publishing articles and essays on the practice of meditation, Buddhist philosophy, monastic discipline, Buddhist scriptures, and the Pali language. Presently, I am a meditation teacher at the Sakanji Toya Meditation Center. We have decided to make this meditation course to share the Burmese understanding of meditation practices with the general public and to clarify difficult points in the meditation practice. The explanations I will be giving to you come from my understanding and experience, and you are most welcome to examine them and see if they bring you any benefit. I believe meditation practice will support the well-being of your mind and body. Meditation is an English term that dates back to the 14th century. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, it means continuous thought or musing upon one subject or series of subjects, a serious and sustained reflection or mental contemplation, a private devotional exercise which consists in the continuous application of the mind to the contemplation of some religious truth, mystery, or object of reverence. For the Buddhists of Myanmar, the practice of meditation involves not only rational thinking, but one's open investigation of the truth of the reality created by the physical body and the processes of the mind. In meditation, we let go of all our presumptions, we abandon all beliefs, all dogmas, and try to remain open to things as they really are. In this sense, we are rigorous scientists, keen on discovering the truth behind our sufferings, our cravings, our misunderstandings, and opening ourselves to the possibilities of genuine happiness, unconditional love, boundless patience, and the purity of our intentions. Well, you might ask, isn't that the work of psychologists and medical doctors? Actually, although some meditation practices involve learning the basics of anatomy and mental constitution, the purposes of meditation are different. In my understanding, the purpose of psychology is to understand the characteristics and abnormalities of the mind and provide solutions to any discomforts and diseases that afflict it. In medicine, the purpose is to understand the characteristics and abnormalities of the body and provide cures for any diseases or injuries that afflict it. Psychology and medicine start with the assumption that an ordinary human being is healthy and does not suffer, and that bodily and human suffering are abnormal. Meditation, in contrast, was developed in response to the suffering of ordinary human beings who are predestined to experience sickness, old age, and death. It is the ultimate cure for suffering. Psychology and medicine can provide solutions for certain afflictions, but because they do not question the intrinsic nature of existence itself, their solutions can only be superficial in resolving the fundamental challenge of existence. Meditation, then, is to research the intrinsic nature of one's own life and examines the root of human suffering. It thereby helps the practitioner find a reliable solution in the form of mental purification. Psychologists have discovered that meditation can bring about a temporary solution to negative mental states. For example, meditation was observed as leading to reduced anxiety, reduced stress, fewer depressive episodes, improved pain management, increased well-being, increased compassion, enhanced creativity, and improved communication. Meditation can also alleviate mental pain, grief, disturbing memories, self-pity, suicidal thoughts, forgetfulness, fear, anxiety, worry, and anger. Some people practice meditation merely to increase their performance in their everyday life, which is fine, but the true purpose of meditation, as described earlier, may be missed. Undesirable states of mind disappear as a byproduct of working towards the real goal of meditation. Meditation has a neutralizing effect on the individual's negative mental states, benefiting everyone and the society as a whole. Another result of meditation is the replacement of negative mental states with positive ones, such as peace, happiness, satisfaction, love, mutual joy, forgiveness, patience, understanding, courage, energy, and farsightedness, to name a few. We should not, however, seek out those positive qualities just to temporarily relieve our unpleasant states. Instead, our goal should be to generate positive qualities of mind to the extent that we can arouse them within a split second for our own benefit as well as for those around us. When we talk about meditation, we talk about a process of mental training, of inner development, directed towards acquiring wisdom. In the teachings of the Buddha, the meditator par excellence, we can learn about a large variety of meditation practices, each of which is tailored to different persons of different temperaments, social positions, environments, and attitudes. Although all of us share the characteristics of a constantly changing physical body and mind, we each differ in so many ways. Due to these differences, our meditation practices will develop in different ways. Thus, there are a variety of meditation practices suitable for everyone. The earliest tangible evidence of meditation practice was found in the northeastern area of the Indian peninsula. Sir John Hubert Marshall, the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, discovered it in the beginning of 20th century. It is a terracotta seal from around the 2nd millennium BCE in what today is known as the Indus Valley Civilization. The seal depicts a figure of an ascetic sitting in a meditative posture with closed eyes and hands resting on his knees. He wears a horn as a headdress and is surrounded by animals. Some believe that this figure depicts a prototype of the Hindu god Shiva because his head is pictured with 3 faces. Others believe he was the lord of creation, Prajapati, because he is surrounded by animals. For the followers of Jainism, he is considered to be Vrishabhanatha, or Lord Bull, the forerunner of their religion. Another archaeological find from the Indus Valley Civilization archaeological site is the so-called Priest King, a small statue of a seated man whose eyes are directed towards the tip of his nose. For some, this is clear evidence of the practice of anapanasati, or meditation on breathing. In this course, we will be talking about the meditation methods described in the ancient texts of Theravada Buddhism. The scriptures are written in Pali language and are believed to be the direct teachings of Gautama Buddha, the great truth finder, teacher, and meditation master, who most likely lived in the 6th century BCE. According to the Theravada Buddhist scriptures, before Siddhartha Gautama attained Buddhahood, he was a royal prince. One day, during his early childhood, he was seated under a tree and left alone by his caretakers for a while. Spontaneously, the idea of meditation arose in his mind. He crossed his legs and directed his mind to his breath. In doing so, he stilled all mental defilements, attaining the first level of meditative absorption. The purity of that act was such that even his father, King Suddhodana, upon seeing it, bowed down to show respect to his young son. Years later, the prince recognized the true nature of human life, namely the inevitability of old age, sickness, and death. Terrified by the idea that a similar fate would befall even him, the pampered, privileged prince of a powerful king, he left the palace life at the age of 29, cutting his hair and donning an ascetic's robes. He hoped that as an ascetic, he could discover how to become liberated from those perils of human life. He knew that the mental defilements which cause humans to continuously roll in suffering are caused by craving. One's next birth is also directly caused by craving. Without craving, he believed, he could achieve freedom from rebirth, and thus from all suffering. From stories in the Ariyapariyesana Sutta, Mahasarchaka Sutta, Bodhiraja Kumara Sutta, Sangarava Sutta, and others, we learn that the now ascetic Gautama first trained in developing one-pointed concentration, as instructed by the great ascetics Alarakalama and Udakarama Buddha. He attained deep stages of concentration. However, he realized that those attainments did not fulfill the purpose of his renunciation. While they provided him with a powerful meditative peace and extraordinary experiences, they did not purify his mind from all mental defilements, some of which still lingered in the stream of his consciousness. So, he left those teachers and decided to find the truth by himself. The Buddha-to-be then engaged in ascetic practices for several years, which caused him a lot of pain and didn't lead to any progress in his undertaking. The ascetic Gautama then renounced the extreme of ascetic practices in the way he had renounced the palace pleasures before the extreme of sensual pleasures. This was the beginning of the so-called middle path, Majjhima Patipada, which soon led him to the attainment of Buddhahood, freedom from all mental defilement. Then, in the region of Uruvela, near the bank of the river Neranjara, he sat down under a pipal tree, later known as the Bodhi tree, and concentrated on his breath. Concentrating on the breath with a genuinely purified mind, the ascetic Gautama gradually attained deeper and deeper stages of concentration, furthering the attainment of absorption which he had attained during his early childhood. Those stages of concentration, the jhanas or meditative absorptions, were fairly common practice in the Buddha's time and are even possibly attained by Hindu ascetics today. These meditative absorptions consist of intense, deep concentration on a single object, such as one's breath. When in such a deep, absorbed state, it is not possible to observe the reality of one's body and mind, since during that state one can only be concentrated on the object of concentration. So, the Buddha-to-be exited those deep levels of concentration, and with his mental acuity, enhanced by those attainments of concentration, he successfully applied his mind to understanding the reality of the inner world. The Buddhist scriptures describe a succession of supernatural attainments which the Buddha-to-be attained during that time. First, he was able to recollect a myriad of his previous lives in minute detail. Then, he was able to know the births and deaths of other living beings, as they were born and died with different dispositions and in different circumstances, according to their accumulated skillful and unskillful deeds. Finally, the Buddha attained the goal of his renunciation. He understood the Four Noble Truths. He freed his mind from all mental defilements, and thus became the Sammāsambuddhassa, the rightly and fully enlightened one. It sounds interesting to talk about psychic powers attained by the Buddha at this point. One might suppose that all three of the supernatural attainments the Buddha achieved as he sat under the Bodhi tree would each be equal in value to the other. However, the Buddha did not give importance to the attainment of remembering one's own births and deaths, or the vision of other beings' rebirth. Why? Because neither of them brings about the cessation of all mental defilements, which is the only focus of the Buddha's teachings. Whether you believe in past lives or not, or in rebirth or not, the Buddha's teachings of the Four Noble Truths are straightforward and accessible for everyone. Let's look at the Four Noble Truths in more detail. The Buddha teaches the inescapability of suffering in the world. What is suffering? Suffering is the nature of birth, old age, sickness, and death. But also we experience separation from what we want and being bound to what we don't want, as well as grief, despair, lamentation, impermanence, and failure. These things are the reality of this world, so we ought to examine them. After all, if we disregard them, it doesn't mean they will cease to be. For example, When somebody develops the symptoms of a sickness, they may disregard it and continue to enjoy their life for a while. But the sickness will get worse, and eventually it will not be that easy to disregard it. In fact, it may even be too late. Now, what if that person decides instead to seek a cure for their sickness? Well, if they are healed, they avoid the suffering caused by the full-blown disease. They may live longer. They may be happier and more satisfied. Similarly, with meditation, we observe the suffering to see whether there is a possibility of solving the present problem or improving and protecting the desirable situation in order for us to free ourselves from hatred and greed and decrease our needs. We therefore naturally live a happier, more satisfied, and more peaceful life, and become more able to generate true love and compassion for all beings. In this way, we become an inspiring friend to the people around us. So, recognizing the inevitability of human suffering is the first noble truth. The second noble truth is the origin of suffering, that this suffering is caused by craving. One might well ask, wait, how is human suffering caused by craving? Isn't it caused by the government, or my boss, or my environment, or an illness, or my classmates at school, or my peers on the job, or by an internet social network? No. The Buddha discovered that the root of our suffering is something else entirely. When we want to solve a difficult problem, it is wise to eliminate its roots. And the Buddha looked at the problem of suffering at its roots. What he found was that, fundamentally, suffering is the result of attachment to one's self. He realized that whenever there is sensual desire, ill will, laziness, worry, or doubt, the mind is attached to an object of one's senses, one's views, or one's ego and sense of self. Whenever the mind is attached, there arises suffering because everything is in a state of flux. If we carefully observe the mind, we can see that it is constantly changing. If we carefully observe the body, we can see that it is constantly changing. If we carefully observe other living beings, we can see that they are constantly changing. If we carefully observe the environment around us, we can see that it, too, is constantly changing. It seems unwise to believe that constantly changing mind and body will always stay in synchronicity with the other changing living beings and the changing environment. If our body, mind, sense objects, other people, and the environment are all inevitably subject to change, then there is bound to be disappointment sooner or later. Ultimately, any attachment is just an illusion. It may work for a while. We may be able to temporarily direct the mind in accordance with the flux of the body and of the environment, but it would not be prudent to rely on the idea that whatever we want we will get, that whatever we expect will happen, or even if it does, that it will stay that way. So, if the mind perceives reality correctly, it may flow in harmony, for a time at least, but more often there is disharmony. Moreover, at a deeper level, we realize there is actually no unchanging self that could attach to anything anyway. Say you want to participate in a meritorious action. That's good. We should try to do good things. But it may not be successful. And how many times have you tried to do something good, but ended up sad or angry because things didn't work out the way you wanted? The wisdom we should develop is that whatever we try may turn out well, but it also may not. If we become attached to the prospect of a good outcome, we will very likely end up disappointed. Because of the constant changing inside and outside of us, we can never be sure. If wisdom is present, the mind stays peaceful regardless of the outcome. When we observe the mind at its deepest level, we can see it is changing literally at every moment. According to certain commentaries of the Pali scriptures, there are billions of such moments in the snap of a finger. When you see any object, hear any sound, if you smell, taste, feel through your body, or cognize by the mind, it all consists of split-second moments arising and then ceasing to exist, followed by a new, fleeting moment of consciousness. In this way, our senses allow us moment-to-moment experience, constantly changing in accordance with every single contact between the senses themselves and their respective objects. Take this floor, for example. It may seem that the image provided to you by your eyes, as well as the floor, the object of your vision, are not changing. But if that were true, that neither your vision nor the object are changing, then you would not see an ant coming in, you would not see if somebody turns off the light, you would not be able to focus your sight wherever you want. In reality, the seeing consciousness constantly arises and ceases, being substituted by a succession of new single moments of seeing in order for the mind to perceive the change or focus on whatever we choose. Because of the nature of the mind, it can always learn something new and is not stuck at a single moment. The practice of meditation leads us to observe the fact that the mind is always changing, that the environment is always changing, and the hopeless situation where, in the ultimate sense, there is nobody who would be attached and nothing to attach to. There are so many benefits of meditation, such as those that I have mentioned previously. In fact, just the ability to accept reality as it is will keep you peaceful. Maybe that is one of the main reasons why an ardent meditator can stay peaceful in all situations. But is that necessary? You may ask. Is it necessary for me to stay peaceful all the time? Well, didn't you ever get angry or sad, and that anger or sadness merely added to the problem, and therefore your suffering? Didn't you feel that those negative mental states ultimately were just counterproductive, that nothing of value was gained, and they robbed you of the time you could have used to help or support someone? Or even yourself? In this way, peace of mind is more helpful and more skillful than being sad or angry. If you become sad or angry, you increase the likelihood that those around you will also become sad or angry. On the other hand, if you are peaceful and happy, you inspire others to also be peaceful and happy. For this, it is necessary to train the mind patiently, purify it, and gain the insight that the mind and body are impermanent, as well as the environment around you. With this wisdom, it is possible to let go of things. To the degree you let go, to that degree your mind is freed. When attachment and craving are just a little weakened, the mind is a little freer and then a little happier. When the mind is free, it can deal with challenging issues more successfully, more efficiently, in a more balanced and detached way. We have been talking about the first two of the Four Noble Truths, namely the truth of suffering and the origin of suffering, which is craving. Now let's look a little at the next Noble Truth. The truth of cessation informs a correct understanding of the first two Noble Truths. Human beings are naturally predisposed to see problems and their solutions in the external world, not inside themselves. The thorough realization of the fact that the solutions to ending suffering all lie inside oneself, that ending one's craving brings about the cessation of suffering, requires a lot of meditation practice. Such a practice not only brings about a deeper knowledge, but also the complete cessation of the defilement of craving, and hence the suffering it causes. Do you think you have no craving at all? Just observing whether you still have any craving is already one of the meditation practices. The Buddha's teaching goes even deeper. He found that the cause of craving is ignorance, or avidya, using the Pali term. And what does he mean by ignorance, by avidya? If one does not understand the truth of impermanence, there will arise craving, along with the concepts of I want, I will, I can. These concepts are fine if they are coupled with wisdom, but if they are combined with craving, they lead to suffering, both for you and those around you. So, one thinks, speaks, and acts in unskillful ways out of ignorance about the truth of craving. Then, where does it lead us? In meditation, we work to get liberated from craving, and thus find the right way to end human suffering. The practice to achieve that noble goal is the fourth Noble Truth, the truth of the path, the Eightfold Noble Path. The Eightfold Noble Path is the essence of Buddhist meditation practices, and the Buddhist meditation practices, in terms of observing reality as it is, are the very essence of the Eightfold Noble Path. That is what this course is about. In the next lecture, I will explore the foundation of all meditation practices in Theravada Buddhism, namely right attitude and ethical behavior. We will look at worldly right attitude and right attitude which surpasses the worldly, the supramundane right attitude. We will then examine whether they support peace and harmony in our life and thereby create conditions for successful meditation practice. Thank you.